All right. Well, hey everyone, welcome to another GoDaddy Pro meetup. My name is Marcus Burnett and I'm on the GoDaddy Pro team. Today I have an extra special guest to talk a bit about creating and tweaking your freelance and agency business models for ultimate success. But before I introduce her, let me just go over a couple of things. One, I will be hanging out in the chat area. So if you're joining us live here at the meetup, I will keep an eye on any questions you have in there. So feel free to toss those in the chat as we go along. And I think we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. And also this is being recorded as well. And so if you need to hop out early or want to share this with your team or something afterwards, it will get posted back to the event page that you registered on. And an email will also go out with a link to the replay. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. Without any further delay, I want to welcome Kristina Romero, owner of WP Care Market. WP Care Market provides training for web professionals, hosts a community for web pros, and offers a directory of professionals to connect business owners with agencies. Kristina has trained thousands of web professionals to create content across the web, and now we get the pleasure of having her share with us a little bit about that. How are you doing today, Kristina?
Thanks, Marcus. Nice. Thanks for that introduction. I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk with everyone today.
Awesome. Yep. I'm excited to have you here and I'm looking forward to everything that you have to tell us. I'm going to go ahead and get out of the way, but like I said, I'll be floating around in the chat and keeping an eye on things there. And toward the end, I'll pop back in to field any questions that may have come up in the chat. So until that time, the virtual floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, in talking about what to focus on today, I kind of came up with this topic I wanted to explore, and I thought maybe I'll throw a question out to the chat. What do you identify as, a freelancer or an agency? And there's many ways that you could say they overlap, which we'll talk about today, but just to pull the community here, what do you identify as, a freelancer or an agency? This is good. It's rolling in. I've got one freelancer, freelance. Got a couple freelances, agency to freelancer. Okay. Free. Kurt just is free. Susan says, I prefer not to go with the freelancer term. Independent designer. Awesome. Very cool. Identify as tired. Nikki, I also identify as tired often. Very busy working mom, so I identify as tired. Well, that's what I wanted to explore today a little bit about successful business models in this industry. We hear the term freelancer, we hear the term agency. There's lots of different ways to work with clients, number of clients, services that you provide, all of that. And I just wanted to look at this from just kind of blowing the top off it and just say, what works for who you serve and in what time of life that works, and how we define freelancer, how we design agency owner. And then talk a little bit about client relationships inside of that, revenue inside of that. So that's where I wanted to go with it. I'm going to kick off with some slides, but as I'm doing this, and excuse the fact I don't have two screens with me. Let's see if this works. Okay. As I'm doing this, totally think of questions you may have and throw them in the chat. I'm sure Marcus can keep track of them. And I want to make sure you guys are seeing. So Marcus, if they can't see my screen right now, there's like a picture of me in front of a computer as I'm in front of my computer. It's so meta. Just let me know. Just get on, because I can't see the chat. So just let me know if no one can see my screen. So anyway, if you have a question while I'm doing this, please drop it in the chat, because I'm not going to fill our whole time together doing this. So I want to answer your questions, but I can't see the chat.
Just popping back in real quick to let you know that we're all good. We can see your screen.
Awesome. Okay. So since I can't see the chat, I will get to your questions after this. So just don't feel like I'm not answering them, because all I can see is what I see. So successful business models. And I say successful because I've done it all as well. I identified as like a freelancer or an independent designer, as the chat said, all different things, and moved into what I considered an agency. And I think the one thing I've learned over time was one wasn't better than the other. It was just a different business model. And so there's a lot of talk all the time, like one moving from one to the other. We see like in a progression. And I kind of wanted to bust some myths around that, but show you where it is helpful and at what stage in your life certain business models may be helpful. So a little bit about me. Marcus introduced myself as the founder of WP Care Market. I've done a lot of work just like you. I was freelancing for a while before I started my agency, did agency work for about 10 years, and then sold my agency in 2020. And I've been training web professionals for the past 6 years in different business programs, WP Elevation, which is now Agency Mavericks, GoDaddy Pro webinars, lots of different things all around, word camps. I run my own recurring revenue retreat conference every year. So there's a lot of talking with web pros that goes on consistently. And over that time, I've gotten some pretty strong opinions, but want to share some insights with you as you start to reevaluate where you are and where you're going with your business. So that's where I'm coming from. I've done it. I sold an agency successfully, which was great. And I work with people like you guys all the time. So this is where that's coming from. WPCareMarket.com/training has all my training and courses in there. So if at any time I'm talking, you're like, what is this girl talking about? Or what is she doing? You can check me out there. All right. So let's get started. Usually it's pinned as freelance versus agency. People have different definitions of what that means. And I wanted to dig into it a little bit by saying it's not who you serve, but how you serve, that I think defines the business model as a freelancer or an agency and the models within that. So it's not who you serve, but how you serve them. And a lot of it is perception. So when you look online and you define freelance or freelancer, you're going to see a lot of definitions around multiple short jobs for lots of businesses. Typically, it's viewed as someone who's serving an hourly rate, usually by the business is seeing as working as a contractor. You'll get a lot of 1099s during tax season right now. And many times, and this is a fallacy, but many times it's not viewed as like a formal legal entity. So if we're looking at US, we're looking at someone typically using their social security number when filling out a W-9, right? And they're not really formulated as a legal entity, not always. But that's typically kind of where you see people starting as a freelancer. They're not looking to form like a LLC. And again, freelancing for multiple, short jobs for lots of businesses does lead itself to be seen as an hourly rate. And people will call you a contractor more than they will call you a freelancer. With an agency, and again, this is all generalizations, I'm going to dig into this way more. You usually see agencies as serving a smaller group of regular clients. So they're not out there taking a lot of short jobs. They're usually focusing on a client base and serving that client base. And when recruiting a client, they're looking at maybe a handful of clients every year and who they're onboarding. They usually have employees or outsource the work to someone else. So they're not doing all of the work. There's part of it that's being handled by somebody else. Not always. There's a lot of one-person businesses that consider themselves an agency. And it's typically a legal entity. And here's a lot of the differences in what I'm going to talk about. Sometimes when you're in LLC, you'll file as an S Corp, which means you employ yourself. So at that point, when you're employing yourself, you're not a freelancer anymore because people don't, and I'm not a CPA, but when you file as an S Corp, they don't really need to send you 1099. So freelancers usually get in 1099s. Agencies are typically maybe filing as an S Corp and employing themselves with payroll. So that's some of the differences when we look at the two. One feels maybe more flexible and maybe more easy to pivot in a lot of different areas with different work. Agency seems more surrounded around processes, smaller groups of clients, and payroll and maybe other people working for you, right? Typically from a higher level. But I say surprised because technically they're kind of the same. It's just they're both self-employed. They both have and deliver the same services, and they can technically be the same legal structure. So if you're filing as an LLC, you can operate it as a freelancer or call yourself a freelancer when you're an LLC, a limited liability company, right? Same with an agency. So I started out providing web projects to my clients, and I formed the LLC in 2009. But I was a freelancer until, in my mind, until around 2012, 2013, when I started doing work of 100% work for another company and realized I wanted someone else to help me. So I wanted to outsource the SEO to someone. I wanted to bring on a developer to do a little bit of work for me. Started kind of getting a little bit more off certain pieces of my business. It then didn't really feel honest to call myself a freelancer because they weren't hiring me, they were hiring a company. So I switched to being an agency. Now, in my mind, and what I thought is interesting in the chat with you guys sharing, I'm a freelancer, I'm an agency, is this really comes down to perception when we're all self-employed and we're all basically the same legal entity. And it's all perception. And where the word freelancer comes from is it actually comes from Ivanhoe when he had to hire freelancers, mercenaries who would fight in the battle for him. So he hired freelancers, people like Lance, like the weapon. That's where the term comes from, freelancers. So technically, it's someone who is hired to work for someone else. When we actually go back to the original definition of what a freelancer is. So if you work for someone else as an agency, I mean, it really is perception. Are you working for that company providing web services and you working for them? Or as an agency, you work for yourself and they're just a client you're serving? Total perception. And you can kind of call yourself whatever, really, in many situations that cross over. So I loved the genesis of where freelancer came from. And I think we have some pitfalls that we fall into of like how the industry sees it. So for these business models, people tend to see in our industry freelance as an hourly rate who are readily more available. They usually have high volume of clients, a lot of sales from lots of different clients. The positives that they could pivot faster. So if you're kind of starting out, you tend to fall into this model if you're starting out because you don't have a list of clients. You'll go on Upwork, you'll work for a lot of different companies, maybe work for one company as a contractor, not hired by them, and you consider yourself a freelancer because you can exit at any time, but you're getting to know what it is that you love to do, which you do really well. You're learning, you're gaining experience. So this is how the industry typically sees it. It allows you to pivot faster. So people like to sit in that space for that reason. It also allows you to take time off easily because if there's shorter projects for lots of different people, you can kind of complete the project and not start a new one if you need to take time off, right? But the downside of how the industry sees it is that there is no security because you're starting projects, finishing projects, starting little things here and there, and it's not really sustainable. You're always fighting for work. Again, can be a misconception. We'll dig into that. But the industry also sees agencies as people who are typically providing flat fees, value-based pricing. You'll hear that, value-based pricing, and providing contracts for longer-term projects like monthly subscriptions for care plans, things like that. Freelancers could absolutely provide care plans, but this is typically how the industry sees it. Lower volume of clients, but higher profit margins and fewer sales from a select swath of clients, right? So the positives of that is you get to build these relationships with these clients more with a long-term value in mind. And you do have to plan time off at that point, especially if projects are longer and you're taking on a fewer projects per year. They're usually bigger projects and you're, having people work on them. So it's a little harder to just complete a project and take some time off and start new ones, right? This is where I talk about care plans and where that helps and that comes in. But it's a bit more secure with having lots of those sustainable clients on a regular basis, but it can be a bit more feast and famine because you can't, like a freelancer, maybe pivot so quickly with having such high volume. Again, generalizations, but typically how the industry sees it. You can operate as an agency as one person, still have this client base, and almost, have the same pain points as a freelancer. So the two cross over often. Now, when is freelancer to agency an actual transition? So this is what I hear a lot is you start as a freelancer, you move to an agency, but we see all the time. They're two different business models. Where I do see a transition happening is when you are no longer doing 100% the work. I feel like it's dishonest to call yourself a freelancer because they're not hiring you. They're hiring a business. They're hiring a business and an agency. So whenever you have someone come on and help you with the work in any fashion, that's typically when you want to transition from freelancer to agency. Also, if you form a legal entity of an LLC, you could still technically work as a freelancer in your terms and definition. But if you once you file as an S corp and you're paying yourself and you're on payroll, I think you have to identify as a company at that point. So you're not really a single entity person that they're contracting. They're contracting with a company. So that's where I feel like there is a transition. Whether that's a better transition is really up to people's circumstances and how they like to work. It doesn't mean that it's a progression that you must, when you've arrived or achieved, you move from freelancer to agency. It all depends on who you want to serve, not who you want to serve, but how you want to serve them. So let's take a little bit of a dig into these freelance business models. 3 different types of freelance business models, different ways you can work as a freelancer, or as the lovely person put in the chat, an independent contractor. You could call yourself an independent contractor, independent designer, independent coder. The first is to actually work for one company. A good example of just someone not really needing to employ someone, but they're paying you hourly to be on hand, but it's more involved than just working for lots of businesses, right? So 1 to 3 companies. You have another model where you're working for what we said, high volume, lots of different companies. And then you have a situation working for a medium to large agency. I guess you could even say you're working for a small agency, but basically you're not client facing. So 1 to 3 companies where you're with the client, kind of under their business in a way, but not really employed by them, many companies, and then an agency where you're working for an agency. Now with the 1 to 3 companies, let me get all these out here. The positive is you are not lead generating. You're not focused on going out and getting more people. Those 1 to 3 companies are sustaining your entire revenue. It reduces your admin time because you don't have to worry about all the different companies that you have to serve and invoicing and whatever. Typically, in these situations, you may be tracking your time and submitting invoice monthly at that point. And they're probably paying you hourly, and it's probably paying you well hourly in these situations. The negative is that of this business model is that you are basically an employee without the benefits or commitment of being an employee. And where does that come back to bite you? It comes back to bite you is if they split. Okay, so when you have one egg in your basket, that's it. It's gone. You have no other clients. So the benefits to this business model I find is people who are starting out, who really are learning a lot of skill sets for the first time, really wanting to learn on the job is really helpful. You don't have to worry about the admin of running a business is really helpful. And again, they're probably employing you with your social security number if you're in the US at this point, because I know we have people from all over the world. But the downside is they will treat you like an employee without having to pay for healthcare, without having to pay, payroll taxes, without having to do all that, or having to commit to have you on staff, and could cut you at any time. So be wary of this business model. Really helpful when you're first starting out, but it's not going to serve you in the long run. It's not going to support you long term. So you have to begin to kind of branch out. And that's where we look at when you're a freelancer serving multiple companies, that high volume. The good things about this is it is constant work. The more companies that you're serving, the more projects that you're serving, it is diversified income. So if one company cancels their contract with you, you're going to probably be okay. You've got a lot of other people that you're serving. So you're not going to feel the hit. When something is 50 or 75% of your income and they split, that's going to feel more painful than if something is 10% of your income and they split. So if you're in that situation as a freelancer, you have to realize the dangers. Great, you're excited because you have someone paying like 75% of your revenue, but the danger of that is it's kind of a scary place to be. So this is a much better business model for freelancers. Diversify that income with lots of different companies. It does provide a feast or famine, because unlike the situation of one company where you're constantly being have enough work to not look for other companies, most of the time when you have a lot of companies, no one's using you as regularly, right? So there's a bit of a feast and famine around that. Again, I go back to having those website care plans in place for a freelancer or agency is key. Getting those companies on some type of website maintenance contract monthly is going to help you just avoid a lot of that feast or famine. And it's just going to increase your admin time. The more people you work for, the more invoices you're sending out, proposals, time tracking, all of the things that go with the admin time that you're not billing for. You don't tend to bill for that. Now, the other business model we see with freelancing, which is more common, and this could be one of your companies, that when I say multiple companies, is just working for an agency. The benefit for a lot of people when they do this is they don't have direct client work. So they're not having to worry too much about coming up with the pricing, coming up with the scope of work. That's kind of removed from their plate. And it looks like, and that would be a positive of why someone would do this. And also you get a lot of experience without the loss of time or money. So what I mean by that is if the agency quoted incorrectly and they don't have the scope of work right, or the person didn't like the work and they bounce, when you're a freelancer contracting with an agency, it doesn't matter. You're going to get paid for everything that you do. Every hour you work, you're going to get paid. So that is a positive working that way. But here's the downside of that business model is there is no direct relationship with the client. So you can't really build in the safety net of website care plans that will end up sustaining you over a longer period of time. If you work it out with the agency to do that, then awesome. I would fight for that. Otherwise, not having the direct client relationship kind of puts you in a place where if you decided to leave, you don't take any clients with you and you have to start all over again from scratch. Also, because you are not quoting the projects, defining the scope of work, it is an undefined, varied scope of work request. So they may ask you one day to do SEO, and the next day they may ask you to go in and clean up a MySQL database. And, it's just, you can't really say like you would to a client, that's not really what we do as well as you can, right? They're paying you hourly to figure it out. So it's a little bit ups and down and can cause stress in that way. So those are the three different ways we typically see freelancers, contractors working for other companies. When we look at agency models, we get out of that perception of working for someone and into the perception of working for yourself. That's where I go, right? So there's two different models with that. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have people working for you. I think it really is just a mindset at that point of how you are serving people and the types of ways in which you're working with them and the boundaries that you work with them. So no longer can they just ask anything of you. Things have to be scoped out. Flat fees, value-based pricing, recurring revenue, retainers. And then at that point, you can expand and have other people work for you. So there's two different models for agencies, I think, that are really profitable and successful. And again, that doesn't mean that those freelance models are not successful. Those work too. And that's, I think, that's the point I really want to make here. There's a lost, I think you can kind of tell which model I like the most because it has the fancy graphic. There's the lost model and the core model. And the lost model kind of looks similar to some of the stuff we were talking about there. You lead gen, you onboard them, you make the project, you offboard them, but then you send them away and you basically tread water with expenses until you get your next project. This is kind of where it comes back to the care plan conversation I constantly have. So this is an agency model of just constant project work, not really working regularly, right? Like you would a freelancer contractor for one company. Although again, there's the high volume version of that business model for freelance. Now, loss is the perspective of your agency is project-based. 100% of your lost revenue has no value in supporting your company over time. And focus is big project value. Yeah, so bigger projects. And I think, unfortunately, that is a lot of the perception of freelance versus agency. A lot of people think freelance is these smaller projects, as you saw in that definition I found online, small projects for many different companies. Oh, well, if I switch to an agency, I'll just have fewer projects, high value, high ticket, high profit value projects. I think that's a bit of a misconception. This is why I think if you view it that way, you're going to fall in this agency model of this lost. You're constantly sending people away. Where I feel like we succeed in the agency model is the core framework. So this is something I kind of made up over time, is you begin with that serving the smaller list of clients over a relationship-based type of projection for your agency. So we start with the care plans. We optimize their care plans with the things that they need to succeed. So SEO, Google Analytics, marketing, all the different things that you can do to help them grow outside of their care plans. Care plans being those website maintenance, plans that you have. And then we redesign their sites over time. So we design their site. A couple of years later, they need some improvements. And then we evaluate where they are regularly over time, whether it's quarterly or twice a month or yearly. We check in, we see how they're doing. How is the website serving them? How is whatever services we're offering is serving them. This is a profitable, successful agency model that is different from freelance, because you work for yourself. You're not working for the company that you're creating for. And it's a relationship based over time. They are your client, and you're setting the boundaries of a long-term relationship. And really with the care plan and the recurring revenue, you're going to completely succeed and get out of that feast or famine model of having to feel like you have to always lead gen. So 100% of your core revenue should sustain your agency if you do it this way. And out of these clients can come more projects and come referrals and everything that you need. So the focus in this business model is long-term value of clients, a little bit different of that perception for the business model. So that's the core agency framework that I like for agencies. Now, it could absolutely be applied to a freelance mindset as well. But I think it's about perception of how the client sees you. So if they can see you as a company that serves them over a longer period of time, you might have a better opportunity to then bring in support. And this is what I mean by that. You have your care plans, you have this revenue. By doing so, maybe 2-3 years from now, you can hire someone to take care of your care plans or your projects through staff salaries. That's going to come out of that core revenue, or admin expenses, or business development, or lead generation, or software expenses, out of all that core revenue from those care plans and optimizations and that core list of clients. So the successful business model of the agency is to really be client focused and use that revenue to support your growth as an agency owner. And again, I go back to, and so anyway, if you want some extra materials around all of this stuff, you can just join our network, and there's an email that goes out that says, hey, here's all the different resources. Which one do you want? So I send out a resource from one of our courses from that sign-up email. So if you're interested in kind of more of what I'm talking about in terms of resources, just go join our network, and I'll send you a resource. But I will go back and let me go to the screen here. I will go back and say, I think there's a lot of value in the freelance model for that pivoting. This one right here, especially with people starting out, especially with people who have different needs, being able to pivot really quickly is a benefit for the freelance business model. So keeping that in mind, you can kind of begin to know when you want to if you want to transition to the other business model of an agency, especially in different seasons of your life when that would make sense. All right, good. Oh, I nailed it. 30 minutes. That's what I was going for. Perfect. So let's see if I can get back in to the screen here. Yeah, there I am. All right. Okay. So let me take a look at the chat. I'll see, Marcus, did anyone ask questions during that?
We did not have a ton of questions come in, but I wrote a couple of down, so maybe we can go through those, and some folks can have a moment to think of some questions as
Yeah.
we go through those. So yes, everyone feel free to continue to add questions to the chat, and I'll kind of pick them out of there as we go along. The first question that I had is, earlier on in the presentation, you shared some differences between agencies and freelancers, and that they're also very similar. Do you find folks move a lot from one to the other? And then, sort of a follow up, during the pandemic, have you seen maybe more people move from agency to freelancer than the other way?
100%. Yes to both questions. So, so yes, I see people often seeing freelancer to agency as a progression of growth. And so they'll say, I built this list of clients and experience through freelance. And now I want to get off one of the tools, or I want to, like I was saying, not be perceived as a person anymore, but as a company, and allows you to kind of bring people on or outsource. I would take really beginning with, had a friend who offered SEO, or had a friend who offered marketing services. And it was a little bit different to be like, go to the friend and hire them, but we'll provide it, and I'm not doing the work at that point. So I'm providing it in my quote so that I can, control the flow of that service offering, but I'm technically not providing that service offering. So that was a natural progression to be sort of like an agency, because we started expanding and offering more services that were outside of just coding, right? Or then graphic design and coding, so I've been in every business model that I gave. I have done every single one of those. So I know the ups and downs of both. And then with the pandemic, people who were in specific industries saw a lot of clients fall off. They would hop on Upwork and saw themselves an agency, but hop on Upwork and start doing what was basically more of like freelance jobs, or ended up deciding to step away from being a self-employed business owner and working for a company, even as a contractor, just one company. Yes. So all of it. It's fluid.
I feel like with some of the freelance stuff that I've done, I've been like, well, I'm legally a freelancer, but then when it comes to marketing and stuff, I sort of pose what I'm doing as more the agency model. Do you find that happens a lot? People just sort
Yes.
of adopt the like agency marketing
Yes, the
and
we. Yeah,
present.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
we, like on the website, it changes from I to we provide, this
Yeah.
like mythical we wherever they are. So, and it's okay to do that. I think it's okay to position yourself as we, because it's all perception. So you begin working with your clients under that perception of we. So it gives you the opportunity, like if you wanted to bring someone on, you could. And there
Hmm.
wasn't this big announcement happening. I'm no longer an I'm a we, you just start off as a we. And also perception of being a company name is less you working for them and you working for yourself, and they're a client of yours.
That makes sense. The other question that I had, so when I was at an agency, we would get a lot of our leads, a lot of our business would be from companies coming to us asking specifically for like a website project. Hey, we've looked at our marketing, our website and stuff, and we've decided we need a new website. So then we went out and looked at who does websites, and we found you. In your core model, it looks like it starts with care plans. I guess the question was, how do you convince businesses to start with a care plan and work towards a website if they're like set on having a new site? Or does it
Yes.
matter where you start in the core cycle?
Exactly. So you're right. At some point, you have to start the core cycle with doing projects for people, and building that up, because those are often easier to convert because the need is immediate. With the core model, you could absolutely do 100% that by just going to people who have existing websites and are looking for help. So you'll see people in businesses who have existing websites want a little fix, right? Because like it's slow, and so I need to find someone who helps with slow websites, or I need to find someone who fixed the menu because it's broken from an update, right? And a lot of people will turn those people away because they're like, that's like half an hour work. Like I don't want to do that. I don't want to like deal with the whole admin. But that's the point. You say, great, I can help you with that, and I will help you moving forward. And that's where the care plan model comes in, because then you basically make it a nice one-off project by finding out more of their needs and then move them on to a care plan So a lot of different things, and people do both. So you still accept projects, especially if that's what you want to do, and then convert them to care plan after the project. Or if they already have a website, you can make a one-off, yeah, I'll fix this little thing. I also saw all these other things that need fixing. I'll put it all together in that one time. Let's fix it, get it where it needs to be, and then let's start this relationship where I take care of your website and I'm here for all of your website needs on a regular basis. Yeah.
Nikki in the chat says, I do care plans for people after designed and built their websites. I hate working on websites that I haven't built. Do you have any
Yes.
advice for Nikki
I
or any
I
other? I
do
mean,
have
that's
advice
very
for Nikki.
common.
So if it only takes a few years in the website building industry to realize people change their website. So that person, who you're working on websites you haven't built is going to be open to change their website in probably 2 to 3 years, because trends change, needs change, features change. So if we can bear, updating and keeping their site going, you're still their top of mind and available to them to redesign their site eventually. So you will eventually redesign the site is how I would frame that. And and with Nikki, what we do is I recommend people do like a website evaluation before the care plan. So you get under the hood of their terrible website and you go, we can work with this like for another couple years, but like this is really bad and we need to change it. And most people will respect your opinion as an expert. And so you can kind of change some things right away to get them on the care plan, especially if it's just going to cause an issue with maintenance month to month. So that's the goal of that onboarding sequence of saying, we just have to evaluate your website before we get on the care plan. And then you go, yeah, we can't have this plugin. It stinks and will cause so many problems, or this theme. And then a lot of times what we did was we said, your theme is not supported anymore, or it was built in a way that's so custom coded, it can't scale and it's going to fall on its face very, very soon. So in their mind, they're like, okay, they start putting money away for that, right? They know that this is going to have to happen. And then you hit that 1 year mark and you're like, yeah, it has to happen now, So.
Yeah, depending on the size of your agency too, and well, I guess not necessarily the size, but based on like the budgets that you ask for building websites and stuff, it can be a little bit daunting for people, especially if they don't know what a website costs. A lot of businesses, that's not their thing. That's,
Yeah,
that's your
they
thing
don't know
as a
what they
web
don't
pro.
know.
Right. They
Yes.
don't know what it's going to cost, and then they get hit with that sticker shock. And so having something like a care plan to sort of ease them in and say, you know, let's work on this together. It's a low barrier, low pressure. We get to see how each other work, see if we're a good fit and stuff, and then work our way up to larger budget items.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes you can make a punch list. So you're on the care plan and there are these horrible things on your site that we do have to address. And every month we'll chip away at it. So you just make a little task list for yourself and check in with it every now and again and replace that plugin 1 month and, tweak the CSS of this page another month, so.
Awesome. I do not have any more questions. Do you want to tell folks a little bit more about where they can learn more about you? I've posted a couple of links in the chat, but
Yeah. So wpcaremarket.com is where I put in a lot of training on defining the care plan, the processes behind executing care plans, automation to make it smoother, different ways you can do that, as well as hiring a team if you get to that point where you do want to expand a little bit and have some help, as well as selling the care plan. There's a course on outreach and conversion. So, and I can talk a little bit about outreach and conversion while we're here too. How do you get more care plans? How do you get more clients in that space? So there's an outreach and conversion standard operating procedures course. We have 4 standard operating procedures on that. And there's also a course on buying or selling agencies. So if you ever looked at like, maybe I'll just buy an agency, that happens in our industries as well. So that's at wpcaremarket.com. I just kind of feel passionate about wherever you are and whatever business model you're doing, the recurring revenue of maintenance plans, care plans is going to be the key to sustainability, especially what we saw with COVID, with it hitting and shutting people down and people just having that uncertainty. Having care plans really pulled a lot of people through that time. They were able to still, pay their mortgage and still put food on the table because they had a few $1,000s coming in every month from care plans, which is key.
Nice. John actually hopped in here with a question, so we'll go ahead and roll with it. How about onboarding? Do you have resources or best practices for onboarding?
Yes, so many. And onboarding and projects, onboarding and care plans. I think the key for everything is to position yourself as an expert, position yourself as a person who is available for a long-term relationship. So when you do sit down with someone to quote them out or make a proposal or send an offer or whatever, I think it's important to say we're different. And the reason we're different is we will care for your website long after the project's done. And positioning that way, I think, is the best beginning of that onboarding. And they know that you're going to give them a care plan, or you're going to have that recurring revenue service long after the project's done. Educational resources on your website are also really helpful to position you as an expert, giving them an idea of how you work, having firm processes. I think if clients don't feel like you do have a process, they may feel like you are working for them. So that's part of it. And they will want to take over that control of that and tell you how to work. No matter if you're a freelancer agency, you need to be telling your client how you work. And you need to be having like, this is how we onboard. These are the steps and these are the processes that we go through. And when they push up against your process, you work for yourself. You don't work for them. So you just define like, this is how we work. And if you change the process, we're not going to be efficient and be able to deliver and meet our expectations of how we need to, serve you. So onboarding with firm processes, educational tools, and you as an expert.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see. We have one more. How do you approach the challenge of understanding the client's business, culture, etc.?
Yes.
Sort of falls in line with the onboarding a bit, I
I
assume.
call
But
it discovery. I think a lot of people have heard that, the discovery phase. I quote discovery before the project oftentimes. So it'll be a flat fee. There will be a deliverable. I think it's always important if you're charging for anything that you deliver something, even if it's just like a Google Doc, you need to be delivering something. So you just say to them, this is great. I won't be able to accurately quote what you need until we do some discovery together. And I get to figure out a little bit more of your competitors, of where you are, your services, what you offer, and then you can create a PDF around keywords, around traffic opportunities, around design opportunities, features they should have on the website, the plugins that could get them there to those features, competitors, different phases that they could look at from A, B, and C if they were to grow, opportunities for marketing. So like all these things you could stick in a PDF, but what it is that you're getting paid to do the research to understand their business, and they don't mind it because at the end of the day, you give them a PDF that they could take to anybody. So it's a little bit of, it serves both them and you.
Yeah, we did something like that at the agency that I worked for before. We quoted like a brand audit that we
Yeah.
did ahead of time, and it did all of that stuff. It looked at the brand itself, the website, we full market or full service marketing agency. So we did just more than just websites. So we kind of audited everything and we charged
Yeah.
for that. And we're like, at the end of this, we're going to give you, we actually printed out a book and gave it to them. We're like, we're going to give you this book that has all that stuff in it. And then what we would do is if you choose to continue to work with us, then we just take what we charged for that off
Yeah.
of the website project.
That's
So
great.
we got paid to do the
Mhm.
research. And then at the end, we gave them something valuable. And if they wanted to continue with us, then we already did all of that work of figuring out who they are and their culture and all of that. So it was easy for us to then roll into care plans or
Yeah.
website or any of the other projects.
I think that's great. That may help you win out over any other people that they're interviewing to do their website, right? And you can give
Yeah.
them a ballpark so that they're not like completely surprised. This is how much
Yeah.
the discovery or brand audit costs, but like the website will be in the ballpark of this depending, so that they're not like completely, because people have in their mind what they think it might cost. So they don't like
Right.
kind of bait and switch, do the discovery. And then you're like, and then it'll be like 100 grand. I once had a nonprofit come to me and we did the discovery first. And I said, well, I don't really know how much it's going to cost. She goes, well, can you at least tell me it's not going to be $100,000? And I was like, why would it be $100,000?
What are
And
you asking for?
she said, because we talked with this other agency and that's what they quoted us.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's not going to be $100,000. I was like, what? And she was like, I was pretty shocked by that as well. And I was like, yeah, I don't know in what universe that would fly, but no.
Yeah. I mean, there are sites that are
There are sites like
100,000,
that, but
but
definitely not a nonprofit for like
right.
the homeless in Los Angeles. So
Yeah, and you are going to get people that will take that deliverable and shop it around and stuff, and that is what it is. But at least you've gotten paid for it, right? I mean, you got
yeah,
paid to do the
yeah,
discovery
you got
part,
paid to do the
so
discovery part, and
that's
they'll
fine.
come back if they've had a bad experience with someone else. They may come back because of what you did.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to toss a couple of links here in the chat and probably wrap us up. I don't see any more questions at the moment. So, one of those is if you want to learn a bit more about Kristina and WP Care Market, go to wpcaremarket.com. I'll also be leaving all of the links that we've sort of shared here on the event page and also in the email that gets sent out with the replay and all of that. So everyone will have those. And then the link in the chat, we have GoDaddy Pro community forums where each event has its own topic and we talk about it there. So if you want to keep the conversation going, please do check that out. And we'll be chatting some more there. Otherwise, thank you for joining us today. We do have a couple of events coming up next Wednesday, same place, same time. We have building modern WordPress plugins with plugin machines. So if you want to if you're a WordPress plugin developer or want to develop WordPress plugins, Pollock and Courtney Robertson will be doing that event and showing off plugin machine, which is something that Josh Pollock has come up with to be able to shortcut the plugin creation process. And then also on next Friday, we have an event at 10 a.m. Eastern, and that will be Courtney will be hosting that, and it will be sort of a live session for WordPress media, like loading images and all of that stuff, specifically through the new full site editing stuff in WordPress 5.9. So we'll be testing some things out there and then being able to take that feedback back to the WordPress team and be able to just continue to make WordPress better and better. So please do join us for those things. For those, any other past or future events, go to events.godaddy.com. They're all listed there. And then we also have the event replays on the GoDaddy Pro YouTube channel. Otherwise, that is it for this one. Thank you again, Kristina, for hopping on and
Thanks.
sharing all of that with us. It was a lot of great information.
Thanks, Marcus. I hope it gave people a little bit of gold nuggets to run with and improve their businesses and go out and do great things.
Absolutely. I guarantee it. Thank you all for joining us here live. Those of you that hung out in the chat and asked questions, super appreciate it. And otherwise, we will see you all at the next meetup. Bye, everyone.
Bye.